Good morning to you. Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com here. Friday now, the 15th day of September 2023. And yes, things are very busy in the Atlantic. We've got Hurricane Lee, Tropical Storm Margo, a couple of areas that look like they're going to try to develop over the coming days. And Africa is still loaded with all kinds of energy waiting to come off, seeding the Atlantic with potential development areas over the next several days to several weeks. You know, it's interesting, the University of Arizona issued a very robust forecast of something like 25 named storms. What was it, like 12 hurricanes and maybe 6 major hurricanes if memory serves, and an ace north of 200 points. That might happen. I mean, we're only at September 15th and we still have all this going on. Yeah, the El Nino really not helping out in terms of keeping the numbers down, but the El Nino has strengthened the subtropical jet. This is all kind of technical stuff, creating these little holes in the Atlantic ridge. That's why we're not going to have to deal with direct impacts from Lee in the United States, at least nothing that we can't handle. Will that pattern hold, or will something be able to sneak in further to the south and then come into the Caribbean or the Gulf? Well, that remains to be seen. So far, with the exception of Idalia, we haven't had any major impacts this year, but it is only September 15th. We still have a long way to go, and that's what we're here to talk about, or at least for me to present to you. So let's get presenting, shall we? First of all, National Hurricane Center homepage. There is Lee as of the 8 a.m. Atlantic Standard Time, same thing as EDT. Intermediate advisory. Pressure still down at 962. Winds are about 85 miles per hour, spread out over a pretty large area, and it is moving north now at 14 knots, 16 miles per hour. And notice that longitude there, 67.0 west, and it's probably not going to gain too much more longitude at all. It might bend back just a little bit, but it looks like New England here is going to get lucky, because this one certainly had the potential. If it had cut in closer and then made that turn, we all know it could have been a lot different than what we are seeing. And just go ahead and tell you, to that end, because the impacts look like they are less, I am not required to go up. It doesn't meet my requirements. People often ask, do they send you out? They, whoever they is, did they tell you to come here? Where do they tell you to put the cameras? Well, generally speaking, I am they. And of course, I work with my back-end team. We get a consensus, but ultimately it's my decision. And there's really just not much for me to do up there. The storm surge, not going to be too bad. Yeah, there'll be some big waves and some spectacular shots, especially from those forced perspectives, where you zoom into something from far away. And you got those big waves in the frame. There will be impacts, but it's not something that I need to take a bunch of equipment up there to capture. Plus, my plane wasn't even going to leave until 1, almost 2 this afternoon. And by the time I got out to the Cape and whatnot, it would be dark, and most of the impacts are going to happen overnight. So we will wait and see what happens in the coming days and weeks. Meanwhile, of course, we do have Margo out here. Of course, this is just an interest to the shipping lanes, and I guess even any air traffic that might be passing over that area. But then we've got this one right here. This is 97L. On its way to developing, and you're looking at the models just like I do. Probably got to watch this pretty closely in Bermuda. Probably going to be another big wave producer, sending the swells out towards the beaches of the western Atlantic over here, right? And then if we expand this to 7 days, we do have another system now forecast to move off the coast of Africa several days out. And this one could ride at a lower latitude, coming off lower, and that could get it much farther to the west than we have seen. We'll have to wait and see. One thing to keep in mind, I might have mentioned this in a recent update. I don't remember. Certainly have had a lot going on in the last few weeks. But I think I remember saying that as we progress through the season, those tropical waves do come off at a lower latitude, the intertropical convergent zone, and so they start coming off lower, and so they have a better chance of missing these little pockets that are up here that are carved out by the hurricanes in the big western Atlantic ridge, or the overall Azores, Bermuda High set up. These low riders, sometimes they can come all the way across. Not often, not all the time, or people wouldn't live at the coast, but it is something to watch as we get closer to October, especially. The pattern's changing. We're getting close to fall. We're going to have big chunks of dense, cooler air coming down out of Canada. That helps to create a gradient down here with all this warm water, and you get the lowering of pressures, the air starting to pile up. Yes, we're going to have a continuation, it looks like, of a very busy season coming over the next several weeks. I don't think it's going to stop. All right, so what do we got? Well, there's Lee, and it's certainly sort of captured by the weakness in the atmosphere up here. The ridge just not strong enough to steer it into the east coast, and I'm sure there are no complaints about that. Surfers out here loving it and hopefully being very, very careful, of course. And you can see it's getting dried out on the southern side. Not much precip there. Most of the precip is on the north and west side. And a lot of wind energy going to push the Atlantic and the Gulf of Maine up here onto the coast. Big waves. There will be some damage. There will be some problems. And a lot of that is going to be overnight tonight into tomorrow. Maybe some heavier rain bands on the Cape up here. And then certainly southwest Nova Scotia could really get in on the action with onshore flow up into the Bay of Fundy and then parts of New Brunswick up here. My friend from Fox Weather, Mr. Robert Ray, he's up there in New Brunswick. I think, or he might be in Nova Scotia. I got to look and see and track where that guy is. His coverage tomorrow is going to be something I'm going to be looking forward to watching that. Since I am not going up there, we'll see what Robert gets. I think he's going to be in Yarmouth, or Yarmouth, however you say it. And I want to show you real quick, we have a friend of ours up here that lives in this area of southwest Nova Scotia, Sluice Point. I think that's how you say it, which is not far. Yeah, it is Yarmouth. That's funny. I got to let the folks at Fox Weather know this. We got a camera up here courtesy of a good friend of ours that we've never met. We've met him through the internet, through Twitter and whatnot. His name's Lucas, right? And I'm just trying to remember all this stuff. I got a lot to keep up with. This is a live shot from his yard. And it looks kind of calm up there right now. It's going to be interesting to see how it looks tomorrow. I got to ask him what happened to the other camera. It's missing in action. Maybe Robert got it. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, Robert Ray is going to be here in Yarmouth. And then you see down here, the way the wind is coming in onshore, that could push a sizable amount of water up here. Yeah, this could be interesting. We'll tune in. We'll make sure Fox can show this. We'll have it up on, probably throw it on our YouTube tomorrow and just watch it all day on the public side. I'll let our back-end team know that that's a good idea. Hopefully they don't lose power. But you see the track, the center line is supposed to go right over, according to the Hurricane Center data. But that's just the center of the center. The effects, of course, will be felt all the way over, even close to Halifax with some strong wind and that onshore flow. As far as the Bay of Fundy, though, it's really going to come down to the direction of the wind versus when the tide is coming in and out. You got like a, 50-foot tide range up here or something like that, especially up here at the head of the bay. And so just depending on how this tracks in, if it's more to the west, and you can really start pushing the water with that circulation. But it's just so massive, I just don't see the same effects as you would get from a well-developed eye wall that pushes that surge ahead of it. I don't know. It's going to be really interesting. It's sometimes, I've said this before, it's okay to say, I don't know what's going to happen. I'm sure there will be observations up there from people, and they will let us know. But as far as New England, down East Maine, the Cape Cod area, we got Cape Hatteras and, other capes up there, right? Cape Ann, that's a cape in Massachusetts. I'm not going to say you're going to be fine, but you've endured stronger nor'easters than what you're going to have to deal with Lee, and at least this time, it won't be 28 degrees outside. So that's a plus, right? Right. All right, so real quick, just looking at the guidance, and I'm going to show you an interesting tweet regarding the guidance in just a second. There's big old Lee right now. This is the Euro from last night. Actually, let's just show this morning's run, right? The 6Z. It only goes out to 90 hours, but that's good enough. Watch what happens with the euro taking Lee up. And remember I talked about that longitude line. It bends back just a little bit, but even on the westernmost bend back, I mean, it's going to lose enough. 66.33 over here at the Cape, that's close to 70 west or so. Yeah, it's pretty far out. About 60 miles of each latitude, each degree, roughly 60 nautical miles. So 66 from 70, that's 6 times 4, 240 miles away. Simple math. Yeah, you won't have too much to worry about. Just an inclement, kind of rough sea day tomorrow. And then Lee moves into New Brunswick. That is interesting how the euro shows at least the center of the vorticity here, moving up the Bay of Fundy. But it's such a large circulation that, again, I don't know exactly what's going to happen. We'll have to wait and see. Meanwhile, that's going to be Nigel. There's Margo still sitting out here just waiting around for something. And then there is more energy that will eventually come off the coast of Africa. And we'll look at that more in just a minute. Hey, remember? I remember people talking about the euro and its king and blah, blah, blah. This sort of model wars that we go through is comical. It's almost like universities or, in terms of football teams or basketball, whatever your sport is, baseball, football, basketball, whatever, right? Rivalries. Sometimes the euro blows it. And I know it certainly did for Laura back in 2020. Sometimes the euro does very well. Sandy 2012, but we can't get hung up on these systems from long ago. What about now? Well, the data doesn't lie unless somebody manipulates it. And these people aren't manipulating it. And the GFS did really well. And there's the data to prove it. You can check out Tomer. And, of course, Brian Tang over here was looking at it as well. Who are these people? These are people that know what they're talking about. They study this stuff deeper dive than I do. But it's nice because they put out very easy to understand, at least I think so, graphs and charts. And just for those of you keeping score, the GFS has done really well with Lee so far. Remember the euro a couple of days ago? Really tried to pinwheel Lee back into New England, got everybody all riled up, the operational. And then I remember all the people that were like, well, that's the operational. What about the other 50 ensemble members? It's like, hey, I see what you're doing. You're hedging your bets there. Just because the operational is the outlier, you were all throwing, anyway. It's funny sometimes. It's like, come on, this is just guidance. And sometimes the physics and the modeling just doesn't work out the way our biases intend for them to. We see these hurricanes coming. We try to figure it out. We think we know, but we don't know because even 5 days is a long, long time. So interesting stuff there put out from some of these scientists that keep track of such things. All right? So what's going to... I can't talk. What's going to happen next? Well, first let's choose a color that'll pop pretty good here. I guess... Let's see. Sky blue. We'll try that. That's some energy. That's some energy. I'm not too worried about that. That's 97L. Maybe red will be better, honestly. Really got to watch that. And then there's even more coming off the Ethiopian highlands. That might be a piece of energy there as well. And each one of these could develop. Seriously. Because the Atlantic is so favorable right now. So this gets us well through the month. This is going to come off in a few days. That's the one that's triggering the yellow area that we saw on the 7-day. This one is still many, many days out, so this is an October deal. And if it doesn't do much in the eastern Atlantic, it ends up in the western Atlantic or the Caribbean, and it just keeps on going. So yeah, that University of Arizona forecast doesn't look so laughable now, does it? And a big part of the reason, I think we all know by now, is the very warm Atlantic, come on, Marcus, the warm Atlantic relative to average, and the MDR down here just still well above the long-term average. But look at what Margo has done, taking some heat out. Franklin and Lee doing their jobs over here. That's great to see. It's just neat to see how nature does what it does, right? And you can even track Lee all the way back here. Look at that. Removing the heat out, dispersing it into the atmosphere, and the heat release through latent heat and the convection. Pretty cool stuff, if you ask me. If hurricanes weren't so destructive, we could all get behind what a marvel of nature they really are. But just want to caution you and keep you aware, the Gulf is still warmer than average, as is the Caribbean and the East Coast and the Southwest Atlantic. Now we're going to start cooling this off a little bit because we do have some colder air coming, maybe some advection or the wind blowing across, mixing things. We're starting to tamp things down gradually, but we're not there yet. So we just have to stay vigilant. We've been lucky that we haven't had, historic impacts. Don't want to ever downplay something, but Idalia, that was a close call. It could have been a lot worse. We know that, as bad as it is for people down there. And there are people still reeling from Idalia. And Lee, a close call and a warning shot for New England. We have time that something bad could still happen. And you just got to be aware of it. We've got a lot of distractions going on in the world. There's that balance between the hype and the wish casting and all these things that people come up with to dismiss a very real threat that could be in front of us. You just have to acknowledge it. That's all it is. And then I'm here with other people that we talk to you about and I tell you about, and we try to inform you. All right? All right, so let's just take a look at the next week on the old GFS, since it's seemingly redeemed itself as of late. This is the 6Z run from this morning. And yeah, let's use blue here. That'll be better. There's Lee, there's Margo, there's 97L. And then watch, we'll get some energy that comes off of Africa. Run this out to the next 7 days. And Lee goes on up and out. And then finally by day 7, this next one, Nigel to be, that'll be another big ace producer. There's Bermuda. We got to watch and see. Big chunk of air right there. I can see it because I know what I'm looking for. Another big chunk of air sitting right there. And there's the weakness. And as you know, if this is more west and this is, Bermuda could be in trouble. We don't know. This is a week out. You know how this, you've seen this play before, right? And hey, if the ridge were to, link up and get stronger, then Nigel could be more west. We just don't know for sure. And then there's just the beginnings of what we got to watch coming off of Africa in about a week's time. All right? And as a reminder, I know that everybody looks at the models all the way out to 384 hours on the GFS, 10 days on the Euro. And I was thinking about it the other day. Just a real quick commentary for you. A couple people I was talking to when we were dealing with my father's funeral and whatnot. Of course, weather was always a big topic. A very weather-savvy family and medical-savvy family we have, us Suddaths. And one of my kids, I think, was mentioning, or somebody did, yeah, there was talk of a Category 6 on TikTok. And I saw a lot of people kind of complaining about this on Twitter recently. And while it is misinformation and it is just a truckload of BS, I mean, we're talking dump trucks full of it, I thought, at the very least, always trying to see the glass as half full here, people are paying attention. You hear something extraordinary, even if it's complete horse poop, at least they're paying attention. Right? I guess. I'm trying to find the good in this. So just really, if you look at the models out 384 hours, do so at your own peril if you don't know what you're looking at specifically. You understand? So just be careful with that. And somebody's calling me. I'll take that in a second. Anyway, it's going to be busy. We know that. I'm here to inform you, keep you up to date on what to be looking for, and we'll take it from there. All right? Have a good rest of your Friday, a good weekend ahead. I am Mark Suddath from all of us at HurricaneTrack. I'll be back with another update for you tomorrow.